these guys are just dumping their trash outside their shop, and now I'm thinking about taking it home, and you're basically hoarding trash. This is mine. I'm taking this with me.
It's freezing here this morning.
Like 21.
Fahrenheit, I don't know. -1.
Oh, really?
Hey,
it's that cold?
Hey Siri, what's -1 in Fahrenheit? Yes.
Like 30.
Please. Yes. You're going to get there faster.
30 degrees Fahrenheit.
30, okay.
Cool. It's really cold. I think you're the opposite season as we are, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're getting into warm temperatures. Nice. We have shorts weather going on.
Does it snow where you are in winter?
Not much, no.
Okay.
Every once in a while. And then it's a giant problem because there's no facilities for it.
Right, yeah, okay. Does that mean you don't have heating in your shop?
We only have heating. It gets cold, but not like most of the year. We don't need it. My arm's going up on its own today. There we go.
I've been very slowly working out the window management on the Mac. It's been one of the most confusing adjustments of just getting stuff to neatly split screen. I worked out the trick yesterday, but I just windows everywhere in the workspaces and I keep losing stuff that I've got open and swiping madly until I find what I need.
Especially if you have a customized Rhino setup or something where you put certain windows on a different screen or some people do that. I've never really done that, but I know people that do.
Did I spy some batch production on Mac accessories?
Is really making enough parts so we could do a decent photo shoot and be able to have, we always just make a prototype basically of each thing when we're testing different aspects. This time it was let's make 3 or 4 of this part and that. For the first time it really looked like there were my brain kept going, oh, we sold some. There's no way.
That's what it looked like, because I often watch stories with no sound on my phone. And so I saw this beautiful lineup of, what is that? The cabinet or box?
Yeah, we've been calling them smaller, medium boxes, and then there's the slider cabinet opens up with doors.
Yeah. What are you using for the doors on that?
At this point, we kind of went around and we wanted to do metal, powder coated metal. That was kind of prohibitively expensive. So currently they're going to be frosted acrylic, which it's okay. I've done it a few other times, but not my preferred long term. I think it's one of those things that could easily be customized, some type of pattern or just different colors.
Have you considered glass?
I haven't. No, that's interesting. Glass.
It's
interesting.
Cheaper than acrylic typically.
Really?
And yeah, I reckon. And obviously it's harder to ship. There's some challenges with its fragility, but I really like it.
I had not. In my mind, it seems way more expensive. It's a good idea. You need a hole to open it, though.
Yeah, we can't machine it, I guess. That's you got to get someone to water jet cut it. And
so you can water jet and oh, interesting. And then soften it somehow, too?
Yeah, I think they call it, our glazing people call it an arris and a polish. So they cut an arris onto the edge and then polish it. I don't know how. They must have equipment. But yeah, we've done a few little custom projects with glass doors, sliding glass doors and stuff. And doing a job at the moment which has got reeded glass in it, which is that really nice vertical beaded pattern. Yeah, I'm into it. And I don't know, I've just got this thing in the back of my head of not putting more plastic out into the world. So
I do too.
I'm trying to avoid acrylic when I can. But
no, I have the exact same thought. That's why I was wanting to do metal, and it was more than triple the cost. Quadruple the cost. I don't know. I guess there's also the wood. It doesn't seem, you probably can't see it, but up there, there's a couple versions of it.
Looks nice from here.
Yeah, you could go with a lot of different. We've tried to design that slot. It's kind of a curiosity at this point. It can accept 1/4 inch and 1/8 inch materials. It has a double layered. I think we saw it in section. It can go deeper on the smaller section. Clever. So you could potentially be able to we were hoping to be able to put the metal panel in as a thinner panel that fell down farther. So,
cool.
Don't know if it'll work that well. We've just been using the 1/4 so far.
Does that mean you can, without changing the machining of those rebates, you can switch out the door?
Yeah. Did you know we spell that RABBET?
I know, you spell it differently. Yeah.
It's so silly. I never even thought about any of that until you brought it up. So we've been doing the 1/4 with a slightly widened ball mill. So it has a little bit of a filleting on either side, and then I just added a lower pass with a 1/8 inch end mill, which is like 0.125 inches below that, and it allows the quarter to just kind of ride above it. And then I haven't tried anything thinner, so we'll find out.
Did you just convert inches to metric, no, to decimal inches for me, as if that would help? Yeah, nice.
Yes, yeah, that's true. Yeah.
I'm familiar with those sizes.
We have like the stupid, I don't know if you guys have these too, but a drill index, right? Like all the different types of drills. You pull it out. So we have like 16 types, I swear. Like I'm just learning about. Fractional was the only thing that I kind of grew up with, even though I despise fractions. And so I've thought about that a few times lately of just like, I wonder what is it as a metric index, just like every half mil, and you never convert anything. It's just such a weird, because we're constantly, even with fractionals, I have to sit there and figure out what the decimal point is on everything. It's so stupid.
Yeah, I've never thought about that.
Just like to work harder for no reason.
Fun.
Stupid.
No, I'm familiar with a lot of the smaller imperial stuff because, strangely, a lot of our, like if you go to a hardware store and buy screws here or like basic sort of agricultural fasteners, it's pretty much all imperial.
Wow.
Stupidly.
That's crazy.
Same with like drill bits and just basic bits and bobs. Like
every time a non-American buys one of these, they spit on the ground when they pick it up. They're like, stupid Americans. I would switch in a heartbeat, but
yeah. Anyway, good to see some knack stuff coming on.
For sure. Oh, on that note, while we're still there, I brought these out again. I think I shared them a while back, but we were trying to work on kits.
Justin shows Jim his knack wall miniatures.
Ooh, so cute.
Knack walls.
Is that a scale model?
Yeah, like 1/8 inch. Something worked out so that you could basically, fit it just perfectly. I had to scale some of it to print right, but they function.
That's super cute.
Brought me back to architectural models. That one's just taped on.
That's awesome.
It's really useful, actually. One of our employees a couple months ago brought one home because his partner loves miniature things. And I was like, see if they can bring up some kind of nice kit for us. And so I brought it home for the weekend.
That's cool. Yesterday we had an all-hands marketing meeting.
Oh, yeah.
Whenever we have Zoom meetings, because Sarah, our business manager, works remotely. She's in Melbourne. We're all in Castlemaine, which is about an hour and a quarter drive away.
Yeah.
So we have weekly Zoom meetings, and the audio quality on these, like whatever they are, standard webcams, just it's terrible, particularly for capturing a table full of people.
Yes.
So I've been using the little Rode Wireless Go microphones, which I use for this, that sound like honey, apparently.
My wife says the same, so it's not just Joe.
I started using them in the meetings because I got two of them, and I made these little like threaded pegboard microphone stands yesterday that the mic clips into.
Nice.
It's got felt for acoustic insulation. It sits on the table, and there's two of them, so everyone can like sit around the table and be mic'd up reasonably well. Yeah, it works really well. I've never had such good outgoing audio in Zoom calls. Awesome.
That's pretty great.
Anyway, little aside there.
You probably have similar experiences. A lot of my Zoom over the pandemic was with like, I don't know, people that don't do content making. I'd have like a light and like a nice microphone, and this camera's actually pretty good. And they'd be like, wow, this is amazing when you record yourself for the internet.
Yeah. So have you made progress on your shooting plans?
I have a model that I've been working on of, I'll just show you because it's entertaining because it's so simple. But the idea is to just build this little faux wall that's like 12 feet by 4 feet. So it's like each one of those is a standard size panel of material, and then we'll just paint it because we're just going to use my friend's space. And luckily, our mounting bracket should fit perfectly on these studs in the back. And so we can just switch the panel either way, hopefully. And then also have one over here on the left.
Sweet.
I think that's going to work. The trick was like, I'm going to have to paint some like MDF clad plywood stuff that's kind of interesting. I was just trying to figure out how that would work and how to assemble it. You don't have to do a ton of like finishing. But other than that, I haven't gotten a whole lot farther on kind of the logistics side first.
Yeah, cool.
Your shoot seemed like it was a success.
Yeah, it was good. Still did that classic thing of, hour and a half in, just getting kind of sucked down a particular path without thinking critically enough. And I find whenever I shoot, it takes me a while to get warmed up and like get the flashes where I want them and the shot's not looking terrible. And it's like, cool, all right, now we're at a point where it's like, it was already lunchtime and we were just at that point where things started looking good. Or I was happy with the direction. But just that classic thing of like, you're shooting a product and you're like, oh, we need something for it. Cool. You just grab whatever's like within arm's reach. You put it in and like start shooting that. You've got to sort of stop, which is very hard to do, and go, why is that random object relevant to this standing desk that I'm shooting?
That's like that thing I was telling you last week about showing my wife something, and
yeah.
I did this one rendering in school. I had a soccer ball in some space, and I was just like, I don't know, I could find it on the internet to put into the rendering.
What's that doing there? Yeah, it's the equivalent of GrabCAD. It's like, what's in the room that I can quickly put in this shoot? So I think my advice would be do a little bit of planning around props if you haven't, because we didn't do enough last week. So we've got these funny shots of like kit parts with just like this really random mix of stuff on them. And the shots look okay. Overall, really happy with the shoot. But yeah, there's some weird props in there for sure.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, I haven't done that. Do you have like a dedicated space set up for this?
No, I pulled got a shared office.
Yeah.
The few of us in there, I just gutted my end of it and pulled everything out of the way. And then we set up backdrop papers and both worked in that corner. That was one of my plans when we built the new workshop, was to have a dedicated photo space that was always just ready to roll, and you could just push a project in there and the flashes would be there and you just shoot and document quickly and get it out the door. But space has a way of filling up and collecting junk. So the area that we initially planned to be the photo area would just chronically be overrun with other things. And so it became quite an effort to clear it out, get ready for a shoot.
Yeah.
And then, a few years later, that space became such a premium that we ended up putting, part storage and racking in there. So that wall's now gone and, kind of working our way through the building. We do have a little room upstairs, which I've done a little bit of shooting in, which probably needs sort of a half day's work, just like reorganize, clear a whole bunch of stuff out of it, and could actually become quite a nice dedicated shooting spot. But the only issue with that is it's upstairs. So trying to get larger projects up there is not sort of feasible. Like if we built some beautiful custom cabinet for someone, we're not going to forklift it up there just for a photo shoot.
I could see your style, especially just like pulling that off, putting it in the middle of the shop, and everybody's like racing around, and you just have this one nice piece of furniture in the center, like blurred out, people going around.
Idea. I really love shooting in the dark and with tightly controlled lighting conditions. Like, I think that's just a habit I've developed from having had some form of, it started off as an art studio. When Laura, my wife, ran art studios in Melbourne, that's where our workshop was. I had like a dedicated art studio space where I shot photo work. And so it had no natural lighting. So I became quite addicted to studio flashes at that point. And so I've always liked shooting in really tightly controlled light. And we used to make animations and short films and things. And so that kind of all tied into this style of shooting where I like block out the windows and just like have complete control over the lighting conditions.
If you're up to it, I'd love to hear some more about your shop. And I feel like this is leading right into it. I just love to hear the story of how you got to building your own shop, because I feel like that's pretty cool in itself.
Okay. Can I refill my coffee really quick?
Put that coffee down.
I know this is naughty, non-standard.
Coffee's for closers only.
So workshop. Okay. So we were renting, obviously, in Melbourne for a long time. But we had the benefit of Laura and I started Like Butter together. And at some point when it became a thing, one of us had to quit our day job and actually focus on the business. And so that ended up being me. Laura was still very much involved, but at some point took a sort of more of a backseat to focus on her art practice because she's a sculptor. But then she started this parallel business of running art studios where she'd rent out these huge spaces in old industrial buildings and we'd build walls and divvy them up. And so Like Butter always had workshops within those art studio complexes, which allowed Like Butter to kind of grow quite organically. Like we start with a small room, small workshop, and then as we got busy, we're like, oh, actually, we'll take on next door and kind of
Nice.
shift and morph. And anyway, about probably 2016, 2017, we started thinking about whether we could. We were always in these old buildings that had demolition clauses on them, so the security on the leases wasn't great. Like, there was always kind of this overhanging sense of like, at some point we're going to have to move out of this building because the rent was so cheap. There were all this kind of sites that were going to get developed. Anyway, so we started looking around to see what we could rent that would be more secure, or if potentially even if we could afford to buy something. And we ended up in a spot where we got pre-approval on a loan for this industrial site in northern Melbourne for like a stupid amount of money. And commercial loans work in this funny way where they kind of don't expect the business to ever pay it off. Like, it almost works like rent.
Oh.
So we got approval on this like $1.6 million loan to buy this factory. And we just kind of stopped and thought, thankfully, and we're like, we're going to be in debt until we're like 70. Like, this is crazy. Yeah. What are we doing? And thankfully aborted that. I was chatting to a friend who had already done the country move. He moved out of the city with his beehives and started his honey business off in the country somewhere else. We were at a point where we'd done some rough pricing on building our own factory in the country, our own shed basically, versus this $1.6 million investment in the city. And I was chatting to him about it. He was like, Jem, the price difference between those two is huge. Think about how many robots that is. He's an engineer and into his CNCs as well. I was like, oh yeah, wow, that is a lot of robots. Anyway, Laura and I had been thinking about moving up to Castlemaine in the country, which is where I grew up, and Laura grew up not that far away. So we've got parents around here and wanted to do the country move for having kids and things like that. We ended up buying this really cheap little plot of land in Castlemaine that was kind of subsidised by the council because they were trying to encourage small businesses to move here and develop. We're in a funny little industrial park with only a couple of other businesses here. But the land was really cheap. Building a factory from scratch, whilst it was cheaper than that 1.6 million in the city, was still a really expensive operation. And so we're going to be, a good amount of debt to pay down. But it was what I say to people in the short story is like, it was cheaper for us to make the move and build a factory from scratch than it was going to be to continue to rent in the city. Yeah. So once we worked that out, it was kind of a no-brainer. We're like, we want to move to the country. It's going to be cheaper for us to build what an opportunity to be able to build a shed from scratch and make it how we want. That's kind of how we ended up. I think, 2019 was when we moved in. It's been, 3 years now.
You're just right before the pandemic. That worked out good.
Right before. Perfect, yeah.
Not like right in the middle.
Furniture got shut down in Melbourne during the pandemic. Like, people weren't allowed to go to work for a while there.
Jeez.
We got really lucky having already made the move and been clear up here.
Did you have employees move distances?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
Yep. A lot of our key staff relocated. We lost a couple of the younger ones who were still in uni or kind of more committed to their city lives. But a lot of the more senior staff all made the country move as well. And Sarah stayed on in Melbourne as our business manager. So we've still got a little location in Melbourne where she works and where customers can pick up jobs and product and things like that.
Nice.
But yeah, it's worked really well. We were definitely nervous about the move. Like, our whole customer base was very Melbourne centric at that stage. And we didn't really know what was going to happen. It's only an hour and a half away, but still, thankfully it worked out really well. And we didn't have any issues with having sort of relocated. There's a few logistical challenges with getting certain materials here and getting stuff back out again, but we've worked through a lot of that and it's all pretty seamless now.
That's nice. That's about the only way I've ever imagined being able to afford something, probably more money than that now, because at the time, and I don't know what the conversion is between our real estate situations. Every time I've half thought that we're not even close to the revenue to be building something, but I've just been like, I hate renting. Maybe we could buy a building or, like something. And it's just an absurd proposition in the city for us anyway. That's cool. I am glad to hear the story. I mean, there's a lot of other aspects to it. I think you're cool. Just your efforts towards sustainability, I think are really neat too.
Yeah, we've got a few things going on. It was a really nice feeling when we were installing our spray booth and I got to cut a huge hole in the wall. I was like, this is our wall and I can cut a hole in it. Just those little things of, investing in rooftop solar because it was our roof and we could do that. And we put 33 kilowatts of solar on the roof and a 3-phase inverter, and it means that while we're still grid connected over the course of the year, we're pretty much net zero in terms of power usage. Where typically we feed a lot more back into the grid on average over the year than we use.
Wow. Did that have any type of were there incentives at all for a business to do that kind of thing? Nah.
Nah. Solar incentives used to be really good here. Used to get paid quite a lot per kilowatt to feed back into the grid. But since it's become much more popular to have rooftop solar, that's all whittled down to almost nothing. But that's never been our interest in sort of making money on power. It's offsetting what we use as our key incentives. But it's also allowed us to do other funny side projects, which you might have seen, like the sawdust compost stuff. So right down one side of the factory, we've got 2 years of dust extractor sawdust piled up, slowly composting away. And we mix food scraps and garden waste and stuff into it. And it's a pretty ineffective compost system. Compost is such a fine art and science, which I don't really understand, but we have done experiments to try and deal with all the sawdust that we generate, because it's pretty much our biggest waste in terms of what was going in the bin. So we haven't put sawdust in the bin really for about 2.5 years, maybe 2 years.
Holy moly.
And we've had the guy from the local community who took a bunch of it away for about 6 months, was making garden paths with it, but pretty much everything else we've cold composted. And last year, I think, I've lost track of time, relatively recently, we had it lab tested to see what had happened to all the glues, because everyone was like, can't compost plywood sawdust because it's full of formaldehyde and blah, blah, blah. We're like, cool, let's try it. And so we took a sample of our most mature compost and sent a bucket of it away to be lab tested, and the report came back really good. All the nasty stuff had broken down, and there were a few copper and zinc, I think, were a little bit high, but it was still within safe levels to be used in decorative gardens and stuff.
It's probably not food creation, but other non-food related things.
Non-food stuff. The advice was probably not in a garden eating out of every day, but otherwise pretty safe.
That's amazing.
That's been fun. We're kind of at our max volume now. We don't have space for any more sawdust out there.
What do you do then? Remove it and start again?
I'm thinking about taking it all home, to be honest. We've got land, and either start a sort of little mini industrial composting facility at home, or invest in some sort of machine that could deal with it here more effectively. Because it's cold compost, it takes ages to break down. Whereas if we could potentially come up with some sort of heated barrel hot composting system, we could maybe deal with our weekly sawdust.
Buy an old cement mixer truck and just have it rotate with the heat inside. It's funny, I was going to make a joke, but it's such a noble effort that I was like, well, maybe I won't, but now I'm going to. You're talking about lining the side of your shop with just heaps of basically what other people consider trash. In a different scenario in the States, I can imagine somebody reporting you, right? These guys are just dumping their trash outside their shop, and you're now I'm thinking about taking it home, and you're basically hoarding trash. This is mine. I'm taking this with me.
Yeah, I've thought about that because it's not an amazing look, but
I think it makes sense.
We do seed it with green manure, which is I was never familiar with that term, but it's a farming thing, I think, where you seed it with mustard seed and fast growing greens, and then that shoots up really fast, and then you're supposed to break it back down into the compost or the soil to help sort of revitalize it. So we planted out with green manure, which keeps it looking kind of garden-y, neater.
Yeah.
And a bit less like a pile of trash and more like a garden. But
just trash bags sticking out.
But yeah, that's
cool. Super cool. Maybe it's more common there, I guess, for this kind of thing to happen. But I've brought this up to other people even before we started doing the podcast about some of the things you're doing, especially at the compost. And it's always really impactful whenever I talk about it with somebody else. They're always like, wow, you can do that? Like, that's so cool. At least here, that's not common. And I would love to see more of it because I have friends here too that we live in this kind of let's recycle or compost everything culture. But yet there's certain things you just don't even consider. And that definitely was one of them. But it'd be cool to make some type of facility or opportunity for that to happen because that's probably the same. I mean, other than offcuts, which I always try to put out on Craigslist for free whenever we have enough. Yep. We just, instead of throwing away anything that's mildly reusable, because we get a lot of artists that want the tiniest pieces, right? Like we'll have a repetitive scrap piece and we just stack them up. We just post it up and it's like, come get it. And it's gone within hours usually.
Great.
So could be a thing. I thought about that with if you want to get rid of your dirt, right? I don't know if this is a thing for you there. Maybe somebody wants it for like fill material. I don't know.
Yeah. No, that's a good idea. Our sort of smaller scale offcuts that aren't useful to us, that, you know, an artist or someone might still appreciate, we donate to the local men's shed, which is this nationwide scheme. It's kind of like makerspace for old guys. Like if it was called a makerspace, I think they'd attract way more people, but it's called men's shed, which is kind of off-putting. But anyway, they're all over the country. Some old dude turns up in a ute and picks up our remnants every month. Or there's a local prison as well, which has like a wood shop that takes a lot of them at the moment. So that's been good. But yeah, we don't have Craigslist here, but we've got, you know, equivalents.
Oh, really?
But it's a good idea putting stuff like that up.
It's always surprising what is and isn't common between us. I can't get over the makerspace for old guys. Because I hope that's their tagline.
I wish. Yeah. I think with the compost, I'd love to be able to create a recipe for you or, you know, any other maker.
That'd be cool, yeah.
To be able to go, cool, we've worked out this system, it's a safe result, and if you do it like this, you'll get this output. That's kind of what I'm working towards.
Yeah.
Basically.
I suppose a lot of that has to do with how nasty the incoming part is, how terrible the glues were.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure that if I had to guess, and if they're not lying about it, which I don't know what they would, but like the States Industries uses like soy-based glues, and I think the Garnica uses soy-based glues. So I would imagine a lot of that stuff has got to be better. I would hope.
That sounds better than what we're dealing with, to be honest. I think, because you're in California, right?
Oregon.
No, Oregon. I always get those two confused. I think you've got better, some of the stuff I've heard about sounds like you've got better regulations around chemicals and stuff.
That's shocking.
Potentially. Maybe.
Specifically, California does. They're basically like one of the largest countries in the world as a state, you know, in population. And they've got this bent, which I appreciate, but there's a lot of other people that do not. They're such a big factor in the economy here that and they're pretty liberal. So if they go, hey, we're going to make the gas mileage necessary for cars this level, it changes the whole country. There's these different things that you'll see all the time. Like the state of California deems this to be carcinogenic.
Yeah, well, I see that on router bits. Like if I buy Onsrud router bits, it's got this thing about California on it.
That's kind of why there's such a big impact that like manufacturers will turn what they need to do because there's 40 or 50 million people there. It's huge. Yeah, it's a huge state.
Wow. Amazing.
Cool. Well, thanks for telling me about that a little bit. I always wondered some of those things, and you do a pretty good job of posting about it. I haven't dug through your website too much. I was just curious to hear more.
There's always more to share. Yeah. The next step is to burn it. Heat our shop.
Seems to be, well, one of the things that one of the major wood shops here, they just do a lot of wood processing, but it's not like straight from the log. It's like more fine woodworking, but they have a pucker, like a brick making machine. And so they've got this like giant dust collection system and funnel, and it gets certain amounts of it. I don't really understand. It filters and it goes down to the pucker, and when you're in there, it's just like pumps out a brick of solid wood. And then I think they sell them.
Yeah. Again, when it's plywood, it's harder. But yeah, there's definitely a market for briquettes.
Yeah.
For fire. But there's a guy in town here who's a bit of a like sustainability guru dude, and he makes these sawdust burning sawdust burning heaters. Brought one around for a demo recently, and we put our plywood sawdust in it and we tested it, and it burns beautifully, like ultra efficient, zero smoke out of the top of it.
Yeah.
Beautiful little thing. I'd love to build one to heat the workshop or make like a heated drying room for the spray booth or something, but I don't think our insurance broker would want anything to do with a shop made fire source.
Yeah, for sure. That's
So
tough.
I don't know. Yeah.
I was imagining the scenario where somebody could buy their kit apart shelves, and then they could also get a briquette of the sawdust that was overfill, like what it was made from. And you could partner with this guy, and you could co-sell them a furnace that also could burn their sawdust. Full circle.
God, it was so cold at home last night. I was like we'd run out of firewood, and I was looking around the house, and I was kind of, my eyes caught the kit parts in the corner. I was like, "Ooh, look at all that nice dowel. That'll burn well."
Well, I did these iMac bases by myself, a lot of them in the middle of the pandemic, and it was just like one of the most stressful, but somewhat therapeutic to just work on a bunch of them. I learned a lot of like how to finish better and all those kind of things. So there's a lot of bad ones. And so when it came around to the summertime, we had a fire pit in the back. We'd have friends over, it's kind of safely outside. They'd be like, "What are you burning?" And I'm like, "It's my pain from 8 months ago. Don't worry about it."
Furniture grade firewood, it's the best. Kiln dried.
Yeah. Could you do something with that? I was like, yes, it's keeping us warm.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, it's funny because we burn little kit parts offcuts, and it's like seeing this like glowing ember of threaded dowel in the fire. It's this beautiful little object burning away.
It is disturbing to see. In some sense, it's also really cool to see, like, I've burned offcuts for a long time at home, just to see something that's cut by like a CNC router. You've got these like perfect shapes, and it's like, what is that doing in a fire?
Yeah. Other than selling your offcuts on Craigslist, how do you do you have a good system for dealing with remnants? I wouldn't put it past you to have like some system in Airtable where you know exactly like the quarter sheet that you've got left over from.
That's why I make no money.
A year ago.
Make no money. I just spend all my time categorizing offcuts. No, I'm pretty happy, and it takes the right people that maybe have similar mindset about how to deal with it. But our last shop was so small that a lot of our offcuts just piled up all over things to the point where it tipped over one of our cabinets. It was too much leaning against it because we didn't have any walls, basically, like 2 walls. Right. It was in a shared space. So that necessitated, when we moved in here, I was like, we can't do this kind of hoarder pile stacking of wood. And so I spent, me and a couple other people, but I kind of started the process. We built a scrap rack that was basically like, here's where the scrap goes. If it doesn't fit here, it's got to go out. And that was usually the mentality. It's changed a little bit since we kind of took the full space over. It's still the same idea of, if we can use it, and the kind of plywood scarcity has changed some of our mentality too. With it's gotten so expensive, we're like, well, we can use a piece this big, Whereas before it was like out. I don't know, trying to stack things in a way that if you can't see all of it, in my opinion, you're never going to use all of it. Like if it's layered in depth. So that was kind of part of our design of. We'd probably have a lot different scale problems, though. I'm assuming you make a lot more scrap than we do, or have a place you have the opportunity to store more of it, I bet.
Which isn't necessarily a good thing.
Yeah, right?
No, we had similar thinking of like when we moved into the new workshop, we made a dedicated spot in the racking. It's like these 2 bays are the only spot where remnants should go, and once it's full, out. And it's definitely really helped developing that relationship with the Makerspace for Old guys, because they do take all that little stuff that was previously pretty junky and would pile up in weird piles around the workshop. That goes out the door now. So yeah, it's not too bad.
Most everybody I've had work here, including myself, I'm probably the worst. I have a lot of like guilt about getting rid of anything material wise like that. I'm like, oh, that's useful. I could, what if we glued it all up and made a weird, nobody ever does that. So I think that was the biggest change for us, was finding what we felt was somewhat responsible way to get rid of it instead of just the dumpster. And that changed more than anything how much we had sitting around. I think that we can very reliably post almost anything scrap wise on Craigslist and it disappears. So whatever your version of that is, like something where you can post and say, here's free material. And that changed our scrap scenario a lot, I think, because we'd definitely keep a lot more on hand. But in our rainy months, it's kind of crappy here because it's like we don't want to put it out in the rain. We end up with more scrap inside for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you categorize or store yours in a certain way?
There is a task on our weekly cleaning roster. It's like a random cleaning roster name generator in Airtable that pings off in Slack every Wednesday morning. So it's always someone's job to do a bit of a sort to the offcut area. And so it's basically just pulling stuff out and combining it with its friends of like putting all the birch together and putting all the hoop pine together and stuff like that. Still becomes a bit of a little tipping danger zone OHS issue very quickly, but yeah, it's reasonably sorted. You can kind of walk up to it and go, I need a bit of radiata 18 mil somewhere there, and grab something out. So yeah, it's all right.
Do those kind of tasks actually get done like every week? Somebody actually does that task? Yeah.
Reasonably well, yeah. So I found the biggest improvement to actually getting stuff done was being ultra specific.
Yeah.
When we introduced the rolling roster.
Yeah.
When we introduced that cleaning roster last year, the tasks were quite broad. It was like, well, there were slashes in it. It was like offcut slash blur, whatever, spray booth, say, just for example. If tasks were slashed or not specific enough, stuff wouldn't get done. But by making stuff ultra specific, I think it's very clear for people of like, that's what I'm doing. Cool. Okay, I'll go and do that. And that worked really well. And
we had a chore list similar to this. At my peak of things were organized and smooth and running well, and we had probably the most common roster of people too. And it worked for like 6 to 8 months. And then somebody left and the pandemic hit and it just went out the window. And I've never gotten it back to, the right state. But I get what you're saying though. That's how I work the best when things are hyper specific like that too. Where if there's too many clean, shop, it's never going to get done. Whatever that was.
Yeah, it was around the same time when I made that realization for myself as well. Like when I wrote to-do lists or task lists for myself, I was like, no, it cannot be a slash task, because I won't do it. It has to be specific. With the cleaning stuff, I wonder about the economics of it, of like the whole production team downing tools for, it's only half an hour. But, then half an hour turns into 35, 40 minutes every week. What does that cost in lost productivity versus, just paying a professional to come in and clean the toilets and clean the kitchen? And
yeah, I've definitely thought about that. It sounds like your business coach is really rubbing off. Is that the person that always pushes you on the productivity time?
No, I don't know. Yeah, probably. I'm sure it is rubbing off at some level. Yeah, it definitely is. But I feel like that's something I've thought about for a while. It's always a tricky balance of production output versus paying for stuff.
The thing I've always wanted that I feel like would pay great dividends is those little, have you seen the shop version of the Makita Roomba?
I almost bought one last week.
I know a woodworker here, he does pretty well, and he has 2 of them. One went down, and he bought another one.
Whoa.
He's a pretty small shop, but that one in particular just makes so much sense to me. Like, I've heard they're kind of stupid. They're no Roomba, just in terms of intelligence, but they do pick up quite a bit of stuff. I've been kind of teasing forever. I'll post something on Instagram. Who wants to crowdfund buying one of these? I'll torture test it for you.
Yeah, I came so close to buying one the other week because Sarah, business manager, was away on holiday for a week. And I was like, what am I going to buy this week that I can reconcile through the account that she just won't see? And I had the Makita RoboVac open on my browser all week and I couldn't quite justify it myself. But yeah, I'd love one of those.
It would be a morale boost, right? Like, it's one for the team.
Shop dog.
Yeah. Except we don't have to feed it and sweep up after it.
Oh, that just reminded me of funny anecdote. Another week when Sarah was on holiday, just random timing, but I was on Grimsmo's Saga pen list. It's Grimsmo's lottery system.
Yep.
Had an email pop up for a Saga, and I was like, "Oh, it's the first time I've ever been offered a Grimsmo product. Awesome!
Yeah.
I can't turn this down." So I bought this beautiful pen, which once converted to Australian dollars is like quite an expensive pen. And it just happened to fall through the accounts in this week that Sarah was away. I was like, cool, I'll just reconcile that away into office expenses. And Sarah had made some comment the week before, like joked that Sarah loves office supplies, always has a very well-equipped like stationery cupboard. And she'd made some joke about stationery is always urgent and important. I was like, I'll remember that. And then
you put that in the memo in Xero?
I did. I put it in the notes in Xero as I reconciled this like $500 Grimsmo pen. Yeah. I don't think she's ever found it.
I'm assuming she doesn't listen to this.
I don't know. I think she's listened to some of them.
Yeah, she will now. I'm sure somebody will send it to her. I won't do it. I don't know, Sarah.
What's happening in the background there? Fun thing?
That's our table saw. It's pretty close to the office. I don't know if Ricky's the wizard of the table saw, so he's always using it for something.
Nice.
He's building, actually, which is pretty cool. I'll have to share something. I think he came up with the idea. It was like in between the idea of like a display for the knack wall to put at a show, like that maker's market I was talking about. We were coming up with how would we do this? Should it be mobile? Should it not? And we kind of jettisoned the mobile thought of just like, that's too much to figure out. But then as he's finishing all of these, boxes, we're like, well, where the heck are we going to put all these finished goods? Where do they go? And we don't really have like a clean room. We don't have packaging for them. The only clean room, in fact, is our bathroom. In this room.
That looks pretty clean in there.
In this room, we've always kept finished parts in the bathroom because it's very low use, right? Like, we're all pretty cool with that. So he's building this mobile off of like panels we can't use because they've changed dimensions a little bit. He's building a mobile version of a knack wall with two sides so we can hang stuff on it and then roll it away to like either store or basically like a finish rack. So it's kind of interesting.
Cool.
Definitely not necessary, but kind of in a way because we couldn't figure out where to put all that stuff. Yeah.
Cool. What's Ricky's background?
I think he just did a lot of woodworking and making, and then I think he was working at a shop locally that did sign work, like making signs, and they got a CNC or something like that, and he either got offered or volunteered to learn how to run it and did that for quite a while. And I found him in the pandemic. He's looking for a job.
Cool.
And I'm not letting go because he's fantastic.
Yeah. Hold on to the good ones.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, my one. I always like to accidentally lose.
No, I'm avoiding that. What?
My good friend Chester loaned me this today.
Don't you have one of those?
I have one, and I sheared off the hot end tip.
Oh,
trying to change it to
sitting on a Prusa, and I thought that doesn't look good.
Tried to upgrade it to a hardened steel version. It was supposed to be a quality upgrade, and I just wrenched off the brass one, and it's stuck in the end. So now I've got parts coming. But otherwise, I would be printing more of the baby pants.
Yeah.
But I went for an oil change, and I ended up with an engine swap, I guess.
Meanwhile, the rest of the world is waiting for a baby pants in the mail.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying. Luckily, Chester and Marshall, they own MC Laser Labs, and I've been friends with them for a while. But I was messaging him about my complaints because I knew he had changed his tip. I was like, "Did you do this?" And he's like, "No, I didn't break off the tip." He's like, "Actually, we're leaving for a little vacation. You want to borrow ours?" I was like, "Yes."
Sweet.
Yeah.
Same model as yours? As your Prusa?
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Is that the Mark III or whatever it is?
MKS3. I think there's a plus sign in there too.
There's just so many things to buy.
Yeah. You got a pen or a printer? That was your choice. Yes. I don't know. What's your plan? What are you doing?
What's my plan? I need a plan. But look, I had a big win on the pencil sharpener, getting double-ended kit parts machined. So I need to revisit some of that code. I got it running and the parts falling into the box. I was like, oh, fantastic. This is great. And I walked away. I came back a minute later and it like crashed and the saw blade was like jammed halfway through the stock. And
Huh.
There's a couple of weird glitchy code things going on, which I can't work out. I don't know if it's just my messy code and the control is like, doesn't make sense. Code should be binary. It should either work or not work. But there's a couple of things that happen sometimes that like it just stops mid-program. Why? And then I'll go in, look at it and like fiddle, and then it comes good. And anyway, so I don't know. Need to play with that a bit more before it's fully production ready.
We've got a glitch in our controller, as far as I can tell, where all of a sudden of the Shop Saver, it's done this forever. Like if you restart the program sometimes, it'll like restart and the plunge that should be a rapid plunge will just be like super slow. Like it goes to like 1%.
Ours does this too.
What
on Trinity.
What is that?
I've always put it down to a Fusion Post issue.
Okay, maybe it is then, but it's only on restarts, right, for us. And then it kind of sticks for a while, and I don't know why. Like it'll be like the rest of the day until something. I don't know, but
robots shouldn't be able to do that.
It's like kind of selective.
Yeah, ours has a really similar glitch where certain geometry, depending on where you put the start point in Fusion, it'll go to cut like a set of parts on a sheet, and they all cut fine, and then it goes to this one part. And depending on how you place the lead in is the best thing we've put it down to at this stage. It goes down to, like 1% feed override or something, like crazy slow feed rate, just like burns up cutters if you don't catch it. Really weird.
The other weird glitch of our post processor for the Shop Saver is if you happen to put too many of the feed rates, I believe it's like the ramp and the feed rate and some other one, if they're all the same, so they're all like 100, it will just default to full speed on everything. It like doesn't put in enough whatevers. It just goes ham 800 inches a minute and somehow never have broken anything, but it's just kind of this weird quirk. You got to like go in and you got to make it one different.
Have you done any post-processor editing? Are you up to that?
Yeah.
Cool.
A lot of like, you wouldn't be surprised. It's basically like making it prettier and like having more information in the header. And like every time there's a program change, it now puts the title of the program in.
Oh, lovely.
Stuff like that. That my next one, I just did the same. I think Saunders talked about this. Last thing I did was I put the time of the post in, like when it was posted. Because the change log time isn't always quite accurate. And then the next thing I want to do is potentially put the file name, like the Fusion file. I would love to put that in the post because sometimes we have too many files and I can't find where it came from.
Yeah.
Especially after a year.
Problem. Yeah. Yeah.
But you done any of that?
Not really confident with that level of code. I've opened my post processors and dug through them, made a few little cosmetic changes, but not confident to make sort of useful changes yet. But I'd love to do more with it.
I mean, it's obvious, but I usually run. I label it draft when I throw it into so people could use it potentially in the cloud, and then only everything else is set to active or like a approved version until it's been tested a little bit. But I have been a little loose with that. Like, I added this cool new thing, and I immediately want everybody to use it. Yeah,
I'd love to get more confident with coding stuff.
Saunders' videos are pretty helpful.
Yeah,
I think that's probably what I've looked through. I have notes on going back to it, and then I'm like, oh yeah, that's how you make that happen.
Yeah, I'm documenting all the stuff to do with tool changes and height offsets in the pencil sharpener at the moment. So every time I go to do it, I've completely forgotten because it's really kooky how I set tools and offsets in it.
I'm
trying to document all of that at the moment.
I would like to request a better video of the pencil sharpener double ender working because I felt like I got big time like teased. Whatever the video was, I was like, no, there's not enough. It stopped. It's like the pressure washing videos when they don't show the end. I was like, what? It's only the beginning.
Something better for some.
Okay.
Can do.
Well, I got to go pick up some parts. Finally done.
Good do that.
Good to chat.
Yeah, always.
See you next time. Bye.
Bye.